Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give it another minute or so for additional attendees to join before we get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. My name is Stacey Adams, and I'm the lead project manager at the South Florida Water Management District and the program manager for the Cooperative Funding Program. And I will be the moderator and host for today's webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is our first of two informational webinars we're hosting for the fiscal year 22 DEP Alternative Water Supply Funding Program opportunities. Our next webinar will be held on Wednesday, January 20th at 1 p.m. We currently have about 20 people on the call today. The webinar is being recorded, and within a week or so, the webinar recording will be posted on our CFP website. We are continuing to work in a virtual environment, so during the presentation and question and answer session, you may hear background noises such as children or animals. Thank you for your understanding and patience in advance. Upon completion of the presentation, I will have further instructions on providing comments and/or questions. During the presentation, there are two additional speakers, Rick Nebulis and Robert Wambastrout. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today, I'm giving an overview on the FY22 DEP Alternative Water Supply and District Cost Share Program. Governor DeSantis signed an executive order which requested recurring funding for alternative water supply development. The governor and the legislature recognized the importance of these projects and the protection of Florida's natural systems and allocated $40 million during both the 2019 and 2020 legislative sessions. For both the fiscal year 20 and 21 lists for DEP submittal, they were fast-tracked and applicants only had a few weeks to submit an application for funding consideration. So DEP and the water management districts worked together to develop an AWS guidance document last year to allow for a longer schedule in anticipation of AWS funding being appropriated. This timeline also lines up with other DEP grant opportunities as well as prior to the fiscal year start date. Grant funding is provided through two different programs. The first is the DEP AWS program, which was established in 2019, where DEP reviews prioritized lists from all 5 water management districts and allocates available funding. Applicants are eligible to receive up to 50% of eligible project costs, but no one is guaranteed 50%. The second is the Water Protection Sustainability Program, which was created in fiscal year 2006, and is defined in section 373-707. Per statute, each of the districts is required to provide a match. The 3 large water management districts are required to provide 100% of state funding dollar for dollar. Our district receives 30% of any allocated funds. Applicants are eligible to receive up to 40% of eligible project costs. These project costs are limited to construction-only costs for AWS and hardware and implementation costs for a water conservation project. On this slide, this is our website information. We have a generic email address that will go to all of our program contacts. So should you want to just send a blanket email, you're more than welcome to coopfunding@sfwmd.gov. Our website, you're going to find the program guidelines, the applications for both AWS and water conservation, all program contacts, and example applications. In anticipation of those AWS funds being appropriated, the district released an application on December 1st. Today is the first of those 2 webinars I discussed earlier. The application will close at 4 p.m. on February 26th. During March and April, an internal staff review process will be conducted, and in May, I will bring back a list to the governing board for approval and ultimate submittal to DEP by May 31st. If there are funds that are appropriated to the Water Protection Sustainability Program, I'll be taking that back to the governing board, anticipating August, September timeframe. Who can apply? Basically any public or private entity, such as a local government or tribe, golf courses, ag users, etc. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to one of the contacts listed on our website. To be eligible for this program, you must adhere to all application instructions and laws and regulations. There are a couple of user groups that are not eligible for funding considerations. So if you're an individual or single resident homeowner, we don't consider those for funding. It has to be like an HOA or a condo. If you are out of permit compliance with the district or DEP, you will not be eligible for funding consideration. This is a reimbursement program. No one is guaranteed the full 40 or 50% funding. Applicants are responsible to move forward with a project with or without district and or state funding. Anticipated dates are the district's fiscal year, which is October 1st, 2021, ending September 30th, 2022. These dates are subject to change based on legislative appropriations and agreements between DEP and the district. We've provided a start date to assist applicants to determine if a project application should be submitted for funding consideration. Allowable costs are towards the project identified in the application and construction or implementation costs within that funding period. Some non-allowable costs include, but are not limited to, pilot projects, design, permitting, engineering, any regular O&M, and any expenses outside of the funding period. As part of the DEP AWS guidance document, they've requested that the districts provide a prioritized list of projects based on some of the following considerations. They need to provide regional benefits. It should support an MSL water body if applicable, additional benefits for water quality, flood control, etc., and projects that are shovel ready and have undergone a cost benefit analysis. Historically, the governing board's priorities for this program have considered that applicants must be within the district or provide benefits to our district. It has to be an AWS or water conservation project. Construction or implementation costs, again, means no O&M, design, engineering, permitting, or pilot projects. Projects should support the district mission and or an approved water supply plan. The district has prioritized projects based on a regional or resource consideration, such as a restricted allocation area. For over a decade, the district has been encouraging water conservation through our year-round irrigation rule. Some of you may be aware the district has undertaken an initiative requesting local governments incorporate the requirements of the district's year-round irrigation rule into their local ordinances. During the November 2020 meeting, the district's governing board approved including this as part of the cost share process beginning in fiscal year 22. And in future years, it will become an eligibility requirement for funding consideration. This is only applicable to local governments and not private entities. If you have further questions regarding this, Jim Harmon or Robert Weinberger will be happy to assist. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Rick Nebulous to discuss the alternative water supply project type and considerations. Rick is the South Florida Water Management District's Water Reuse Coordinator. He has been a project manager with our alternative water supply program for more than a decade. Give me just a moment so I can share my screen with him.
All right, I think I have control, and thank you, Stacy. As Stacy mentioned, this grant program includes both alternative water supply projects and water conservation projects. I'd like to take a few minutes to focus in on the AWS side of the program. First, let's talk about what's included under the AWS project umbrella in this grant program. Simply put, AWS projects are those that increase water supplies through the development of non-traditional water sources, which can also include storage of those AWS sources. Non-traditional sources include brackish water, salt water, reclaimed water, excess surface or storm water. or any other source designated as non-traditional in a regional water supply plan. It should be noted, however, as Stacy did in one of our slides, that operation and maintenance projects, even if they are for development of a non-traditional source, are not included in this program. Previously, Stacy mentioned some considerations for the program from the DEP guidance document. The district's review will also consider additional guidelines for AWS projects. These include, does the project support the goal and objective of our regional water supply plans? Does it reduce dependence on traditional sources? Does the project support the ocean outfall legislation for those projects along our lower East Coast? And will the project's contribution be in a resource-limited area? These considerations, along with the ones that DEP has outlined, will provide the guidance for potential project funding. Now, as previously stated, this grant program is for the construction of AWS projects, but obviously not all water supply construction projects are considered AWS. Allowable AWS costs include projects such as transmission lines for brackish or saltwater sources, reclaimed water pipelines and the pump stations or storage associated with them, RO trains and the pumps and equipment that go along with them, ASR wells, assuming of course that the source for those ASR wells is non-traditional, brackish water production wells, and concentrate disposal wells, again, if the well is associated with an AWS source. However, as you might expect, not all AWS construction costs are allowable under the program. Non-allowable AWS costs include things like design, permitting, videos, or as-built of the construction. Construction of finished water projects such as storage tanks or transmission lines are also not included. End user connections and backup generators are also examples of non-allowable costs. More examples of non-allowable costs, if you're interested, are provided in the guidelines on our website. So basically, AWS funding costs and consideration comes down to the point I made on my first slide, which is this AWS program is for the construction of projects that increase water supply by developing non-traditional sources of water. And I'm trying to advance, there we go. Now I'll turn it over to Robert Wanvestrat. He's our Senior Water Conservation Analyst and Technical Advisor to discuss the water conservation side of the program. Robert will review some highlights of this project type and can be reached directly, or should you have any questions regarding any technical aspects of water conservation under this program. Robert, take it away.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so the water conservation component of the cooperative funding program looks to support projects that improve water use efficiency and conservation. And these project types can target an individual property or business or even a farm or nursery directly, or they can take the form of a rebate program for residents and businesses that's managed by a sponsoring entity, such as a utility or a local government. What you see on this slide are the review considerations for each project application. These are in addition to the basic ones that Stacy mentioned up above previously. And what you'll see here is that it's not only the size or scale of the project that matters. And by us having this suite of considerations, it allows for a greater diversity of possible projects. And one heavily considered item on this list is the cost in dollars per 1,000 gallons of water saved. And by focusing on this, it allows the district to spend its dollars a lot farther and get more bang for the buck. And it also drives applicants to design their projects to be as cost efficient and effective as possible. So we're going to take a look at the two broadest categories of projects, and the first of those being those implemented in the urban setting. And these types of projects often target water using fixtures and appliances in residential and commercial settings, as well as irrigation efficiency type of projects. However, they can target existing properties or structures if that happens to be in a new construction situation, if the builder or the property manager owner is working to achieve certification under the Florida Water Star program, which is similar to LEED if you're familiar with LEED, but it's a bit simpler because it only targets water use efficiency. You can learn more about that on the web page, which is the address is there at the bottom of the screen. It's floridawaterstar.com. So in addition to those more common project types I just mentioned, building owners and managers and other sponsoring entities can also consider projects that target things like cooling towers or industrial machinery or industrial processing and so on. Even utilities can look at projects that may improve the efficiency of their operations. But a big point to note is that we're sort of leaving the door open for all types of projects, even the ones that we haven't thought of. So if an applicant believes that they have a project that isn't listed directly or mentioned in our guidelines anywhere, we may still consider it, and we encourage you to submit an application with something brand new to us. Now, there are also non-allowable project types under this under the Water Conservation Program. And the first of those would be projects that target new construction. Again, that's unless it's part of a Florida Water Star certification program effort. So that's the one scenario. But aside from that, new construction is not eligible for Water Conservation Program funding. Then the second project type, which is something that Stacy and Rick mentioned, are those project types that might target normal operations and maintenance type work. So in this way, I think it's helpful if you think about these things, think about your project being something that's going to improve your water use efficiency rather than just addressing routine operations and maintenance just to bring you back up to speed. You want to think more about getting ahead rather than back up to speed. So we're going to look now at the second broad project category, and that would be those which target agriculture and nursery operations. And underneath that heading, we've sort of identified two general project types. And the first would be those project types that are looking to convert an existing irrigation system to a more efficient one. So think about maybe moving from flood to overhead irrigation. And then the second grouping under the agriculture nursery project types would be those projects that are seeking to improve the ability of the operator to manage their irrigation systems or irrigation equipment. So for that, think of things like soil moisture sensors, weather sensing devices, and automated controllers. But again, just like I mentioned earlier with the urban type projects, we don't think we know every single project type that's out there. So if you have an idea on how you can improve water use efficiency in an agriculture or nursery project setting, and you don't see it listed anywhere in our guidelines, go ahead and propose it, because we're open to reviewing all project types. Again, there's some non-allowable types underneath this, underneath the agriculture and nursery project types. And there's sort of, again, two categorical areas here, and that would be those project types that seek to install a brand new irrigation system or an extension of an irrigation system into an unirrigated area. So that doesn't work. We're looking to improve existing scenarios and existing systems. And then the other would be projects that would be seeking to create a new water source. So that would be something like a tailwater pond or a reservoir, those types of projects. Those are not allowable under this project. And then as was mentioned again, the normal operations and maintenance type projects would not be allowable under this program at all. And that covers the basics of the water conservation component of the CFP. We urge applicants to review all the program guidelines to make sure that their projects meet any and all applicable standards and requirements. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Stacey Adams so she can review the program website.
Thank you, Robert. So on the screen is just the main landing page for our CFP website. So you're going to see just the generic information on the CFP, but also the FY22 application schedule, as well as the registration link if there's anybody that's on the phone, but you think other staff members should be tuning in, please have them register for the January 20th meeting. Continuing down the website page, you'll see the links for the guidelines. The AWS application is a Word file. The water conservation applications are Excel files. There are two different ones. One is that's for ag and nursery, and the other is for any urban application. And then we have our example applications for both AWS and water conservation. If you haven't already subscribed to our funding opportunity newsletter that occasionally goes out as an email blast, please go here where it says click here to subscribe, and you'll be added on that list. So anything that we send out concerning the CFP program will go to those that have registered for that list. You'll also find all the contact information for Rick, Jim, Robert, and myself. And once you've downloaded the application, you guys are ready to submit your project. You're going to go up here to the online submittal form, and you're going to click this button, and it's going to take you to this form. All of these fields are required fields. Whoever is the project manager or the responsible party, that too should be populated in the your name field. If you have a consultant filling this out, that's fine, but we would prefer that if we're dealing with the entity, not the consultant, because usually the consultant will refer us back to the entity point of contact. But those both need to, whoever the point of contact is and your authorized representative should be included in the application. If you don't know what your project long is, you can click on this little button here, and you can enter an address, and then your latitude and longitude will be populated in decimal degrees in the two fields above, because those are required fields. You must choose if you're submitting an AWS or water conservation project type, and you have to upload at least one file. So you would search your files, and if you're uploading any additional information, if you have vendor quotes or you want to upload some maps or any other PDF kind of thing, you can only upload one file at a time. So you would upload the application, and you would click to add another file and add as you go along. There's a maximum of 5 files. And then you're going to click the little I am not a robot CAPTCHA and hit submit. If you're successful, you should get an email that's automatically generated that'll give you a number that shows that your application was submitted. If you are having any issues, feel free to contact any of us listed on the website for technical assistance, and we will be happy to do that. So at this time, a couple of quick housekeeping items before we open it up to Q&A. If you're using Zoom via the computer, use the raise hand feature. And if you're on the phone, you're going to do *9 to raise your hand or *9 to lower your hand. *6 will mute and unmute your line, or the button on the Zoom call itself. When you're called upon, please state your full name and affiliation prior to providing any comments and or questions. And with that, we're going to begin. So our first guest is, and I apologize if I mess up anybody's name, Ted Makowski.
I think I may be Ted Makowski at this moment, but I am Jean Swain, who is I'm the Vice President of Lazy River Village, which is a cooperative in Northport, Florida. And my question is, You mentioned existing facilities. If we have an existing stormwater management pond that is receiving a huge volume of runoff water from Highway 41, and it's undermining its banks, and we'd like to improve that stormwater management pond to the point that it could be used for enhancing our irrigation system, improving the quality of the water contained within the pond as a result of the stormwater runoff. Is that the type of, are we wasting our energy making this application? Is that the type of program that might qualify if we were going to both beautify, enhance the quantity of water to be able to be contained, enhance the stability of the water and the quality of the water? Would that be a possible grant application form?
Thank you, Jean. Under our program, no, we're not doing stormwater management type projects. We're only focusing on alternative water supply developments and water conservation projects. What you're describing would have fallen under one of our old stormwater management type projects, but there are funding opportunities at the state level that I could possibly get you some links to that information.
Okay. And even if we were to use the water, improve the quality of the water, and then use it as our source for irrigation, that still wouldn't qualify?
Not unless you are planning to upgrade your irrigation system from an old system to a new system.
Okay.
The irrigation system would be eligible for funding consideration under water conservation if you're doing that.
Okay, thank you very much, Stacy.
You're welcome. Thank you. Do we have any other questions at this time? I don't see any additional hands raised. Well, if that's the case, then thank you again to our speakers and everyone who joined us and participated in today's webinar. As a reminder, the webinar was recorded. It will be posted on our CSP website within a week or so. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great